Well, for one thing, they need to be informed, but more to the point, increasingly, there are markets for students abroad. Students should just not. Well, first of all, the music market is not just local; it's national. So a lot of our students will be looking for jobs nationally, traveling to LA, New York, Nashville, and so an understanding of how the national music market works clearly is important. Regarding the international music market, I find myself being asked by students more and more about where can I find that, is there an internship in Australia I can find, you have that contact in London, can you make it available to me because I'd like to do my internship there. We have the engines of growth in the world economy now are countries like China and India. The music market there is exploding. There's tons of opportunity, and they're bypassing, if you want, they're starting the wrong way around. They're starting with mobile and even less than online services. So there is a lot of growth in new areas of the industry, a lot of investment, a lot of purchasing power, a generation that has skipped what I grew up with, in a sense, and it's very exciting. So we get a lot of students from the rest of the world here. So increasingly the international market is a source, if only for their gigs or for or for a potential interest for a job down the line, or just for an adventure. And I think we're becoming much more global in every sense. There's no question. I think they should be attuned to their possibilities internationally. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, you know, obviously you start small and you build big if you're a band, but there's no reason why you might not bypass that process and take advantage of, for instance, the exposure that you can get in England from the press. There's a very active market for music publications in England, and you might conceivably think, well, why don't I start there, get myself some exposure, then return to the United States, play, use that exposure I've had there to build a career. And so we have to think a bit outside the box, and I think a lot of the frictions that were there in foreign markets have to some extent diminished. The European Common Market is now single currency. You can now book gigs online in ways that you couldn't do before. Negotiate with promoters in a currency that now you can predict you will have no exchange risk. There are many things that have improved, not just in communications, but you know, we've had a trend towards regionalization of areas and integration of different regional areas. So also the music market is becoming so fragmented that if you're into dance music, if you're into techno, or if you might explore your music in places where it really is hot. Plus, there's a lot of synthesis of different genres going on. The music market has become far more fragmented since I started teaching in terms of the genres played than it used to be. So you just need to stay informed and take advantage of opportunities. Now you can, as I said, you can book a gig online. It's a company called Sonic based here in Boston, and they enable you to check festivals in the world and go from and book, send your press kit electronically, saving a lot of steps that used to take a lot of time and cost a lot of money just in postings before. And so it's becoming a bit easier to start thinking that way. It will always be critical for a musician to think locally and internally and in its immediate environment, but I'm seeing more and more an opening of interest in what is outside there. I think it still remains that the national boundary is terribly important, and typically you'll have much more leverage if you've got a national following. But there are examples of art, depending on the genre. I guess the question is depending. There are genres like world music that artists have made their name outside the United States before they've made with their own music. Take Astor Piazzolla, an Argentine distinguished composer of tangos. He made his reputation outside Argentina well before he made it in Argentina. A lot of world musicians go to Paris to break, to make a mark for themselves. So it could be that in certain genres it's more easy to do it. But and it turns out that if you're born in Sweden or in Norway, you're in luck, because you've got an export office, or in Brazil these days, you've got an export office that supports your music, or in France even, where the Ministry of Culture supports music. So those countries are, if you're an artist in such a country, and that's quite different to the United States, it is conceivable that even if you don't have such a following, you'll be, you know, your export office or Ministry of Culture will be promoting you, and it may be that you might have some success outside your borders. You'll probably have to have some success internally before they take you seriously. But it's happening. It does happen that artists in some genres, I would say, and remember, we're not in the world. In the universal genres like rock are diminishing in significance, I think, in the sense of there's many other ways of genres of music out there. So I guess for some genres, who knows? I mean, you know, you go to Japan and they have an interest in the tango or whatever. They're very eclectic taste. But I don't want to exaggerate and overstate the case. I think those opportunities are there for certain types of music. I think, you know, it still remains that you'll probably have to get going locally by and large.